How much responsibility do you bear for the lack of success for your party?
We're going to be running to form government in the next election. I'm going to be running for prime minister.
Respectfully, that's not really an answer.
She just eviscerated that man on television.
Yeah.
Jagmeet Singh continued his tour of self-destruction by agreeing to appear on CTV with Vassy Kapelos. It made us ask the question, did he really expect that nobody would ask him any hard questions after announcing his breakup with Justin Trudeau?
Let's take a look.
Mr. Singh, in your video yesterday and in the comments you made today, you called the Liberals and the government more specifically weak and selfish. You said they've let Canadians down, they've abandoned Canadians, and that they have led to endless disappointment for Canadians. How can you ever support them going forward after saying that?
Well, we've torn up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. I've torn that up. And I know that that means election is more likely than before. And it was really clear to me, there's mounting evidence that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were just too weak to take on corporate greed. They were too beholden to corporate interests to stop big corporate grocery stores and corporate landlords from ripping people off. And frankly, they're too weak to stand up to the real threat of conservatives under Pierre Poilievre who want to cut our healthcare system and cut pensions. So for all those reasons, we've ripped up the agreement and we're putting to Canadians the choice for the next elections between New Democrats who are going to give people hope or Pierre Poilievre and the conservatives who want to cut.
Okay. So if you watched our previous video where we covered Jagmeet's press conference, you will notice that what he's saying sounds very familiar.
It's the exact same talking points repeated over and over, almost verbatim.
Now, he tried and not really successfully walked around all of that with the reporters that were throwing things at him, especially Brian Lilley, Laura Stone, David Aiken. They weren't having it, but he still was able to just, get away with it because they're only allowed to ask 2 questions, despite Brian Lilley probably asking about 5 or 6 as Jagmeet was talking.
That was beautiful, by the way.
No doubt they had security, escort him out. Probably not.
No, but I mean, he got his money worth from those 2 questions.
Oh, for sure.
Good job.
When you are now one-on-one with someone like Vassy Kapelos, who gets as many follow-ups as she darn well pleases, that's not going to work too well.
No.
And he's going to find that out right quick.
Ripping up the agreement is just ending the formality of it. You explicitly said, for example, in that video, that you will continue to consider whether or not to support the government on matters of confidence on a case-by-case basis. Again, I'll put the question to you. You have told Canadians they are weak, they are selfish, that they have abandoned the very people who put them in office. You just described a host of reasons why you don't want to be a part of any formal agreement. How can you reconcile for Canadians watching now that you're still willing to vote with them and keep them in power on a case-by-case basis?
Excellent question.
And this is what we've been saying for the last 24 hours.
He's completely painted himself into a corner because it's just like Vassy said, like, you say that you've ripped up this agreement on paper, but you're still willing to uphold this government that you say is too weak to do the job. So then why are you supporting them?
So it makes me wonder, because I've been thinking about this between the videos, it makes me wonder if this occurred by accident. And what I mean by that is during one of the press conferences that Jagmeet was having about the rail strike, he had shot his mouth off by saying, well, if the Liberals, send them back to work, then, we're not going to support them anymore, and yada, 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 yada. And then what did the Liberals do? They basically enforced
binding arbitration.
Right. So that essentially called Jagmeet's bluff. And then he probably was like, oh, whatever. But I imagine his caucus was like, dude,
you've got to do something now.
You just essentially said in front of a ton of union people, tens of thousands of union people who are our base, that this is what you would do.
Well, and they're constantly bleeding that base over to the Conservatives.
So now I wonder like, this is just theory, but this may explain the weird timing. Now he's in the position where, okay, now he has to exit this agreement or else risk losing all of the union people, and then they literally have no voters left. So I've been wondering, why is he doing it now and not waiting until Parliament? Well, he has to do it relatively close to when Trudeau announced that binding arbitration decision. Otherwise, it means very, very little.
Right, because Parliament's not sitting for another week and a half still. So, I mean, if he did wait the week and a half until September 16th, then it's out of the news cycle.
Well, and remember, Pierre's still traveling around
Right.
to all of these places, to where all these union workers are. That's what he's been focusing on right now, is stealing Jagmeet's lunch the last couple of weeks. So he's going to be going to these places and saying, see, Singh's not doing anything. He said he would. And that's what he'll be putting in everybody's ear. And he would have been right. So I wonder if that kind of started this mess, and they didn't really know how to maneuver out of it, and this is the only way to do it. So then they filmed this a couple weeks ago, because he made these statements a couple weeks ago. Remember, that's what Singh said. Well, we filmed this weeks ago. Okay, let's take you at your word. This is when all this went down. So now you're in this position where you've exited this supply and confidence agreement. And now, to Vassy's point, you are even more cornered unless the plan is to go to an election this fall, which nobody believes you. You are completely screwed over the NDP political party when it comes to the polls and when it comes to seats.
There's absolutely nothing that Jagmeet and the NDP can do now, because we already get the sense that the Conservatives are going to bring a opposition motion of confidence
100%.
As fast as possible. So if Jagmeet votes with the Conservatives with that motion and takes the government down, we go to election. He's going to piss off the provincial governments who are also going to election, which I believe is BC and Saskatchewan. Then he is probably not ready for this, either financially or in terms of volunteers or in terms of strategy, as we can plainly see. Now, if he votes against the Conservatives' motion, he's going to play right into Pierre and the Conservatives' hands by saying, oh, well, he didn't vote no confidence, therefore he still has confidence in the Liberal government, and, this was just a show. Now, if Jagmeet waits until the spring to call an election, now Canadians see that it was indeed about his pension. As soon as he's got his pension, he calls an election. There is nothing this guy can do that will not land him in hot water.
And as a result of not voting with Pierre and the Bloc and the Conservatives on a non-confidence vote, he will still lose the union vote, because Pierre's just going to turn around and say to all the unions, see what this guy says? Talk is cheap, and he's still supporting them. So it doesn't matter. So
right. He's made a royal mess for himself.
So now his decision is, what is the least bad decision of bad decisions that he can make?
My opinion is to go to election now. I don't think he's going to do it, but I think that would be the least hurtful for the NDP.
Well, that's the thing. Their polls are low. They may get a little bit of a bump from this. I would expect that. And maybe they win maybe they win the 2 by-elections. That would be a bit of a bump for them. But you go to an election this fall, you're gonna hurt your campaigns for the rest of the candidates out there, unless you're asking all your volunteers to do triple duty.
Yeah. And if he doesn't vote down the government when the Conservatives bring their non-confidence motion, that is going to make their numbers tank in the polls.
They may get down to single digits.
This is a very, very bad situation politically.
Well, I don't know what the votes are going to be. So we'll see what the vote is, and I'll make a decision based on what comes before me, using the lens of, is this in the best interest of Canadians? Depends on what the votes are and depends on what comes before us. But we know that this does certainly mean that an election is more likely, and that election will be about a choice. People are frustrated and done with the Liberals and Justin Trudeau, so it'll be between Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative cuts or New Democrats' hope and building up the programs that people need.
This is the problem when you rely far, far too much on your talking points, because Jagmeet had to deviate in order to sort of ask Vassy's question, because he's like, oh, she's not buying this. And she's going to continue asking me unless I give her something. So he says, well, you know, it's going to depend on what votes are before us. Now, the problem is, he then goes on to say, you know, it depends on, you know, is it best for the Canadians or is it not? He then retreats back into his talking points, probably even forgets what they even were, and then goes on to say Canadians are done with Justin Trudeau and his Liberals.
Right. So by that logic, we know the Conservatives will be bringing a motion of non-confidence. And we know, based on his statement, that Canadians are done with Justin Trudeau. Canadians do not have confidence in this government. So if he votes for confidence in the Liberal Party, he's not doing what is in the best interest of Canada.
Or what he's trying to say, and this is the contradiction that he's now trapped in, is that, well, I didn't vote non-confidence because I thought that was in the best interest of Canada. Meaning, Trudeau being in power is in the best interest of Canada.
Which we all know it's not.
And then he gets trapped in that, well, Canadians want Trudeau gone. You even said that, Jagmeet. So you're in favor of keeping a weak leader who's destroying the country, who, according to you, is all about greedy CEOs and helping his greedy friends. You think that is in the best interest of Canadians.
Rather than giving Canadians the choice of the government that they want.
As he keeps saying. So this he is absolutely screwed.
He is royally boned.
I have to also ask you, Mr. Singh, why now? And in particular, you know, I've done so many interviews with you. I'm sure you're sick of them, where I ask you the question, like, this is the way in which you're describing the government. Why are you still keeping them in power? I don't understand what changed, saliently over the last number of days or weeks that led you to make this decision now versus, let's say, 6 months ago. You point to corporate greed, for example, particularly in the grocery sector. Food prices were at their highest over a year ago, and the government wasn't doing much even then. Why didn't that force you to make this decision? Is this more about really polling and your electoral chances? And some would accuse in the Conservatives your pension.
Oh my goodness, she asked it.
Atta girl. Get him, Vassy. Get him.
I'm not going to say anything else other than get him.
Not at all. First of all, let's put that to rest. That's a lie by being propagated by Pierre Poilievre, who's, I think, got his full pension when he was like 31. So I don't know. He wants to cut people's pensions. Speaking of pensions, he wants to cut seniors' pensions. I mean, that's what we should be talking about, the fact that we want to defend and strengthen people's pensions, and he wants to cut them.
I don't like this question, so we should talk about something else that I've just made up, because Pierre hasn't talked about cutting people's pensions at all.
No, and I'll go through this briefly. Interestingly enough, we did get this question by email today, but I'll go through it again very briefly. That it was the Harper Conservatives who wanted to raise the age of retirement from 65 to 67. And the reason for that was because people are living longer than they did back when OAS and CPP were first introduced in, I believe it was the 70s. So now that people are living longer, they wanted to increase the age of retirement so that you're not taking out CPP or OAS during those 2 years, but you're also paying them in, like paying into them for 2 additional years. So that's kind of like a net benefit of 4 years. And that would help sustain the programs so that they don't go bankrupt by the time that Ryan and I are in our 60s.
But when it comes to decision, we always knew that at some point we would have to make this decision, that we weren't going to stay in this forever, and we would make that decision based on a whole host of factors. What we saw was that we got a lot of things done. We were able to get the dental care program out the door. Pharmacare steps have been passed in Parliament. So a lot of the work that we wanted to do is done. And it became very clear, more and more evidence mounted that the Liberals were simply too beholden to corporate interest.
What's the evidence?
And that's not going to meet the needs of Canadians.
With due respect, what is the recent evidence that underscores that point that didn't already exist 6 or 8 months ago?
I would say the approach towards working people when it comes to the rail workers. I was really concerned about that. I raised those concerns very publicly, that these workers were just asking for more safety, and that CPKC and CN Rail in a lot of ways, what looks like a collusion of timing this together. They locked out the workers. First of all, the workers weren't even on strike. They locked out the workers, and the workers weren't even able to negotiate before they were forced to binding arbitration. Another example of the Liberals caving to the corporate interests instead of letting workers fight out and get a fair deal at the table. Just that was another example of mounting evidence. We got a lot of things done. The Liberals aren't able to do more for people, and we've torn up our agreement, and we're going to go vote to vote.
Okay, so that's a lie. He says that the workers were locked out before they had any opportunity to negotiate. Now, they've been negotiating this deal for over a year. Now, what you can say is that the sides were very far apart and that an agreement wasn't close to getting done. You can say that. But to say that there was no negotiating at all is a complete fabrication.
Well, and the other thing, the fact that both these rail lines were on strike right now when farmers are harvesting their grain, not only could this have destroyed our economy, it also could have caused starvation in this country.
And other
that's
countries.
serious. That's
And
very
other
serious. So it is very unfortunate that both sides were not able to reach an agreement on their own, but that's what arbitrators are for.
Well, and I take Jagmeet's point that is it possible that the rail lines, although independent companies, were kind of working together to mount more pressure on?
Possible.
Sure, that's plausible.
Yeah.
100% that's plausible. But it's not the point. The point is that ever since you shot your mouth off in that press conference, sounds like something changed. And that's why I think it was an oopsie that he did that, because all of a sudden because none of this makes sense unless that was kind of the tipping point. And he sort of just admitted that the CP rail strike issue was the tipping point. I don't think it was the issue at all, because to Vassy's point, there's been far more egregious problems going on over the last 2 years affecting far more Canadians. And you're choosing this one? That doesn't make any sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it's not true.
If they had behaved differently in that labor dispute, would you still be in this agreement?
I don't want to deal with hypotheticals. They did what they did, and it became very clear to me that they were no longer able to meaningfully tackle the problems that people are going through. They've shown again and again, and the evidence has got to the point where we said they cannot take on the major issues of the day. The fact that corporate landlords are rent evicting people, jacking up rents, they're not going to take that on, and they're not doing what's necessary. So we tore up the agreement. And the next election, again, is going to be a choice. People want change. They're going to replace Justin Trudeau. Do they choose Pierre Poilievre, the Conservatives, who want to let big corporations rip off people even more? They're going to put fire on the fuel of corporate greed. Or New Democrats, who are saying, let's make people the priority. Let's protect people from the corporate greed of these large, powerful interests, and let's make sure people get lower rents and lower grocery prices.
And we're back to the talking points. Keeps retreating back into that.
But, you know, all these things he said that the Liberals have done, he's been right along there holding their hand, doing it with them.
100%. You've kept them there.
Right.
Like, literally kept them there. Which means that you support this government staying in power.
Well, and he keeps saying, you know, Canadians have a choice between me and the Conservatives, but he won't let us have that choice. He will not let us go to the ballot box.
Right, because right now he can't win. And
he's never going to win. His best chance to win was back in March when we said it was. Well, that was his best chance.
His best chance to become official opposition was back in March.
Yeah, but that's a win for the NDP.
It's a huge win.
Like, probably never in my lifetime will the leader of the NDP be prime minister. I don't see it happening.
I don't think in anyone's lifetime
but
it'll...
official opposition, for sure. I mean, the NDP is just too far left for most Canadians to put into power, like as the governing party. But they have been official opposition before, and they could have been official opposition again if he had listened.
Well, and if you want a taste of what Canada would be like under the NDP, look at all of the spending that Trudeau has done. Look at the lack of fiscal responsibility that Trudeau has. There's your NDP government. So interest rates go sky high. You have massive taxes, and they force the entire country to be completely reliant on the government because it takes away your entire paycheck to fund everything that they hand out, which is worse than it would have been if you would have had the choice to actually go and get it yourself. That is an NDP government, which is why they will never be in power in Canada.
With great respect, all of the stuff that you lay out, we have been talking about, you and I, you and other politicians. There has been accountability directed at the government and questions about why they aren't doing more on those issues that you talk about affordability, about grocery prices, about corporate interests for over a year. Like, it was particularly difficult for Canadians. I mean, inflation has edged down, but prices are up 20% over the last 3 years, and they were super high
Absolutely.
a year ago. My question isn't hypothetical. You are raising the idea that the CN rail dispute and their handling of it really was it a turning point? Like, again, I'm not clear why this wasn't a decision you didn't make earlier, unless now you see that your personal interest is better served and you didn't before.
Wow.
Bang. Bang.
She hit the nail on the head with that one.
Oh, she sure did, because she's putting it to him like, listen, it doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it's not true. So Occam's razor, all things being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one, which is you're only doing this out of personal interest.
Well, and let's take a look at that for a second. If he's pulling away from the supply and confidence agreement now and does not vote non-confidence when the Conservatives bring up their motion, which is going to be soon, to me, that means, he's probably doing it for his pension. And if he does hold out until February, then he's almost certainly doing it for his pension. I mean, that's what it says to Canadians. We all know when he qualifies for his pension in February. So if he holds out until then and then has a non-confidence vote or goes in with a Conservative non-confidence vote, it'll be blatantly obvious to Canadians, and Canadians will go, well, you put us through all this misery for an extra 6 months just so you could get your pension? I'm not voting for you.
Well, and this is the thing. I think it's for two reasons. Number one, the NDP party is basement in the polls. And again, I think he shot his mouth off, so he had to do it in order to try to avoid salvaging any of the union votes.
I mean, in order to salvage the union votes, yeah.
In order to salvage the union votes,
yeah.
But and also, it'll be it doesn't even matter if it's not his pension. If he waits until February,
it'll look like it.
It will.
It will absolutely look like it. Whether it is or not, that part will be irrelevant.
Perception
It'll look
is
like
reality.
it. Right. And the Conservatives will jump all over that.
Oh, 100%. Like, the first confidence vote that Jagmeet does not join the Conservatives in the bloc in voting for,
that's what they're going to say. And
it's going to be weeks upon weeks upon weeks of, it's your pension, it's your pension, it's your pension.
And if he does hold out until February, again, perception is reality, and that's what the Conservatives are going to be telling voters. Heck, that's what the Liberals are going to be telling voters, was look at this guy. He had to hold out until he got his pension.
Well, like I mentioned, we got work done. We got things done, things completed. We wanted to make sure dental care was completed. To at least the second phase include seniors, and a lot of that program was done over the summer. So that completed
but it's not totally
a significant
done,
part of
and
our
neither
agreement.
is pharmacare. It's
so
still before the Senate.
That was really important. This summer, actually, we got the portal. We got some major changes. So we got a lot of work done.
This summer we got the portal.
It's absolutely hilarious, though, the way he just talks over Vassy and keeps going, but he's really monotone and almost sheepish. It just comes off so bad. He's only rehearsing talking points, and there are no real answers.
Right, because that's the thing. How are you not better prepared for this? Again, this didn't happen by accident in terms of he fell into this and he just woke up yesterday and said, oh, well, I guess I have to announce this. No,
it was planned.
And you would have had your media coaching before this. Who the heck is your media coach? Oh, right, it's the NDP. They can't afford a media coach. But seriously, how are you not better prepared to anticipate these questions and then ask them? All you know how to do is retreat into your talking points. But he's trying to say, well, pharmacare is done. Pharmacare is not done. It's not even passed yet.
No, I think it's on its way to third reading. I don't even know if it's been through committee yet.
Well, it's in the Senate.
Oh, it's in the Senate, so it's finished third reading.
So, and the Senate could send it back.
Yeah, they could make amendments and send it back, and then it goes back and forth until they can send it for royal assent, until both houses agree, essentially, and send it for royal assent.
Now remember, like back in March, 5-6 months ago, Jagmeet said, everyone's going to be getting their drugs very quickly. And we said, no, they're not. No, they're not. 6 months later, because even after this, there's the formulary that needs to be established.
Right. And the other thing is, every single province in this country and the territories, they all have their own pharmacare plan currently. I'm going to put the link to this information in the description again, because it is very useful. If you find yourself needing assistance with your medication, check out what your province offers in terms of a drug benefit program. So I don't know why they want to come in and make a national pharmacare program when it sounds like each province, and remember, the provinces are the ones that are responsible for healthcare, but each province and the territories all have their own programs already.
Well, and this is why the provinces are pulling out.
It became very clear with their approach towards workers in the rail situation that, again, another example of caving to corporate interests. And so we made it very clear that they're no longer able to meaningfully tackle the problems that people are going through. We've torn up the agreement because they're too weak to take on the Conservatives, and they're too weak and beholden to corporate interest to stop what is the major concern, what people are going through right now. The high cost of living is being driven by corporate greed, and the Liberals aren't doing anything about it.
I guess I would just point out that both pharmacare and dental care are not completed in the vein that you saw them. There's even still a legislative process that's unfolding where pharmacare is concerned. I also wanted to ask you about...
Well, on pharmacare, in terms of the legislative process in the House, that's completed.
Yes, before
it's
the
a Senate vote, which obviously we don't have any influence over.
No, but things can happen. You never know. I'm just saying that's not completely done. I also...
It's voted in the House. That bill is done.
So you think for sure it's going to happen? You trust the Liberals to make sure it happens? Because I think the argument you're making
that's on them.
Yeah, but the argument
if Justin Trudeau doesn't move forward on pharmacare, that's because Justin Trudeau chose not to. But
he's even talking himself into problems on Vassy's show. Like this.
This is such a joke. Well, that's on them. Yeah, but it was your job to hold them accountable. Well, and you weren't, and you don't.
And his argument was, we stayed as long as we could to get everything done. And then Vassy's like, but it's not done. And then he's like, well, yes, it is. Well, no, it's still legislatively, it's not done yet. Well, that's gone through the House. It's done. It's in the Senate. It could come back. No, well, it's done. Okay, so what if the Liberals don't do it? Well, that's on them. You just made the argument. Like it's crazy town. This is crazy town.
Yeah.
In terms of
the argument you're making, sure, but the argument you're making to Canadians is essentially you stayed in it as long as you did to get things done. So if those things aren't done, why aren't you continuing to stay in it unless there's some kind of political interest in it for you to move to a different position, which is what the Liberals essentially are accusing you of. They say blatantly, Karina Gold on this program last night, you put your own interests ahead of Canadians.
And that's the narrative. That's been the narrative from the Conservatives for a very long time.
Now the Liberals are saying
and yep, now the Liberals are hopping on that train.
So, like Jagmeet.
This was such a huge mistake. This is a disaster. It really is. It's a catastrophe.
It's a dumpster fire is what it is.
This man is going to take that party into the ground.
Dental care is done. We've got the legislation necessary for it, the program's out the door, and people are getting it. Millions of people have gotten it. And the pharmacare legislation is passed. The anti-scab legislation is passed. Major pieces of our agreement have been completed. We've gotten a lot of work done, important work. And now we're turning the page on that and saying that the Liberals are no longer made it clear they're no longer able to do what's necessary to tackle the issues of the day. And the issues of the day are the high cost of groceries, high cost of rent, housing, and groceries are two major concerns I hear from. The Liberals have shown again and again that they've caved to corporate interests on those two files. And then most recently in the summer, they caved to the corporate interests of these large corporate railroads instead of letting workers get a fair deal. They've made it clear that they're not interested in tackling these problems. We've torn up the agreement with Justin Trudeau.
I mean, their argument is that a whole ton of other workers would have been impacted by a stoppage on the rail network, but I do take your point. Can I ask you to clarify on the question of the pension, because it is an argument that the Conservatives are continually using. Are you eligible for a pension in February because of when you were elected in the by-election, and has that factored into your decision-making in all of this, or will it factor into your decision-making in perhaps prompting an election? Can I just get you on the record on that?
Get him, Vassy.
And this is it. This is the magic moment, right?
She's got him cornered.
Well, and she asked it in such a good way. Can you clarify for everybody? Are you eligible for a pension in February?
Because I want this on the record.
And did that factor into your decision making at all? Please answer.
Not at all. It's a ludicrous suggestion. I'm obviously going to get reelected in my riding. I'm not worried about that at all. This is a silly argument being bought by conservatives, but it's on purpose. And the reason why Pierre Poilievre is doing this, because he wants to distract from what he wants to do. He wants to destroy the dental care program for seniors. So for your parents, for your grandparents, he doesn't think they deserve to get their teeth looked after. He wants to get rid of this entirely. Not only that, he also wants to get rid of our universal healthcare system. He's been very open about that. He doesn't want to see a public healthcare system. He wants to see it entirely private.
I don't recall Pierre Poilievre saying that ever.
No, I don't recall that being said ever either, because we probably would have called it out.
We would have called it out because, I mean, I believe at this point in the game anyways, and especially in Ontario, that a two-tier system is probably going to be the way to go, where those people who want to pay for it can pay for it, and those of us who don't have to. Well, not directly anyways, because we've paid for it through our taxes.
Well, put it this way. We would not have been in a position to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get my knee fixed.
Right. But my point is, if Pierre had ever said that he wants to abolish universal health care and make everything private, we would have called that out.
I think everybody would have called him out.
Yeah.
That would have been a disastrous statement to make in terms of the Conservative platform. So, just to be clear, they have not said that.
No, and the fact that Jagmeet is making those kinds of accusations outside of the House of Commons, he needs to be very, very careful, because he could be sued.
He could be sued for defamation. So that is something that, as a lawyer, he should probably know.
Yeah, he should know that. He should know a lot of things given his career as a lawyer.
Yeah,
but
he should know many things, but yet he knows none. So anyhow, the only talk I've heard of conservatives talking about privatizing healthcare, at least around the Ottawa area, is Doug Ford, and we addressed this in the last video, where he would want to add privatization of healthcare without touching the public healthcare system to create capacity. That's what's been talked about. Now, what Pierre has talked about is bringing in, as Tawny said in the last video, tens of thousands of Blue Seal workers, or the existing people in Canada, and certifying them through a new Blue Seal program to get them to work. Guess where? Inside the public healthcare system.
Right, because I mean, you've all heard the story of my nurse friend, and I'll say it again, is that she lived in Canada, is a Canadian citizen, and crossed the border into New York State every single day to go to school. Got her license in New York State, and it took her over 6 months to be able to bring it back to Ontario so that she could practice as an RN in Ontario.
So
that's way too long.
And notice that he didn't say, yes, I'm qualified for my pension in February.
Oh, he totally avoided it. Just, that's silly.
Dodge.
So that's what he's distracting from. He knows he's lying, and he knows that he's distracting from the fact that he wants to destroy not only dental care, but our healthcare system as well. We're going to keep on fighting to defend it because we believe in it. We believe no one should have to worry about how much money they have in their pocket to be able to get good quality care in our country. We're going to fight to make sure our healthcare is there for people, and we're going to fix it.
One final question for you, for Canadians watching right now, Mr. Singh. The Prime Minister keeps getting questions about whether he should remain as leader because of where public opinion polling for his party sits. At the same time, while the Liberals have had, dwindling, to say the least, political fortunes, your party has not been able to capitalize on that at all. Your polls have remained fairly stagnant for the last 3 years. Should people be asking you if you should remain on as the NDP's leader? Are you asking yourself that? And how much responsibility do you bear for the lack of success for your party?
We've brought in the biggest expansion of healthcare in a generation. I'm proud of the work that we've done. I'm running to be Prime Minister of this country, and I'll be leading the party to the next election, absolutely.
So do you not feel like you bear any responsibility for being unable to capitalize on the Liberals' fall from grace among Canadians?
We're going to be running to form government in the next election. I'm be running for Prime Minister.
Respectfully, that's not really an answer.
Oh my gosh.
You know, you can tell Vassy's a mom now because that was a mom retort. Like, respectfully, that's not an answer.
She just eviscerated that man on television.
Yeah, that was like, and it
serves him right.
It's an interesting exchange here because the way Jagmeet answered those two questions was with like disdain. You can see it on his face. Like, how dare you be asking me this question? I'm running for, in the election, and I'm going to run for prime minister.
But you know what? Vassy makes an excellent point. With the Liberals and the NDP both right now being far left parties, you would think that with the Liberals just, taking the plunge in the polls, that the NDP would be able to pick up some of those voters.
Yeah, and
but they haven't.
No, because
everybody's going conservative.
Because again, Jagmeet's in the corner eating the checkers, like Tanya's been saying, and they've been useless.
This is such a gong show.
It is. This is literally a dumpster fire.
Like this guy thinks he's going to be the prime minister.
Apparently. But I love how she just like emasculates him by like, that's not an answer. I honestly think Jagmeet thought that was going to be the end of the interview, but she's like, no. I'm going to get an answer to this question.
Are you worried at all about the fact that you haven't been able...
That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm running for prime minister. I'm running to beat the Conservatives. I'm running to make sure that this country has someone that's going to be on their side.
Wow. That was a tense...
That was curt.
Yeah, well, respectfully, that's my answer.
Wow.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the guy that says he wants to be prime minister of this country. He's not even answering questions about how his leadership has affected his party before he becomes prime minister. Never mind when he becomes prime minister.
Well, and I mean, this isn't his first rodeo. Obviously, he's been around for 5+ years. Why was he not anticipating these sorts of questions?
Well, and it's not like he hadn't run for politics before. He was in the Ontario government before this.
Right,
So, this isn't new.
Do you suppose he's just so arrogant that he went on this show thinking that he could just fire off his talking points and everybody would clap, clap, clap and see you later?
Oh, probably.
And I understand what you're saying. I think Canadians understand that you are going to run to lead the party. Do you bear any responsibility, though, for the hill that party has to climb in order to be competitive with the Conservatives in the next election? You have framed the choice as very obvious for Canadians and the consequences as very dire if the Conservatives win. But your party has not been able to compete with them. Is that at all your responsibility?
Well, it's a serious fight. There's no question about it. I'm not in any ways going to diminish the challenge in front of us. We've got a very big challenge. But it's clear that people are done with the Liberals. They're done with Justin Trudeau. And so when people want to replace Justin Trudeau, they're going to have to look at the two choices. For federal parties, there's the Conservatives or the New Democrats. They want to change election. They want to get rid of Justin Trudeau, which people tell me they're frustrated with him. There's two choices. Not to say that this challenge is easy by any means. It's a very big challenge. But I want Canadians to know the choice is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, who are very open. They're going to cut your pensions, they're going to cut health care, and they're going to let big corporations rip you off. Or New Democrats who want to restore hope. We want to build and strengthen our healthcare system and your pensions and stop these corporations from ripping you off. That's not easy. I know that's going to be an uphill battle, but that's the choice in front of Canadians.
So then give Canadians the choice. Let us go to the ballot box. Let us tell you guys who we want to be the prime minister. And guess what, Jagmeet? It's not you.